What's going on, guys? This is Tower number 9, and this is going to be the first of my gameplay videos from that Take the Initiative tournament that was played on Tabletop Simulator. This was just played this last weekend, and we're going to lead off here with the Swiss rounds. So it was there was a group phase, which was round robin, into a single elimination top 8. And so this is my first, these are my first games from the group phase. I'm playing against thorrk here. I am running Cunning Sabine, and thorrk is on Command Vader. So in this first game, we're going to lead off here with the Green Squadron A-Wing, using Sabine's ability, 1 damage to each base. thorrk actually misses his turn 1 play. I know that thorrk has talked about this before, but he likes to mulligan for ramp, and that is a strategy that can work well, but it does mean that you're going to be more likely to miss your turn 1 play than if you were mulliganing for a 1 or 2 drop, which is, I think, maybe a more common strategy. So he plays an open fire, kills my Green Squadron A-Wing. I play Leia Organa, Defiant Princess, stand up a resource, and then play an Alliance X-Wing. I also use Sabine's ability for 1 damage to each base. So in that case, I was using Leia's ability to essentially allow me to play 2 units this turn instead of 1. I could have also gone for the Falcon, but with this play, I end up with 2 units on the board, and I don't have to spend that tax to replay the Falcon. One downside, though, is that Leia Defiant Princess is vulnerable to a potential ambushed Super Laser Technician, which is a play that thorrk really likes to make and is a solid option for Rampion as Vader. Um, okay. thorrk does have the initiative here, having used that open fire and then taking initiative, and it looks like we are going to see the energy conversion lab. And there's the Super Laser Technician. So he does manage to take out Leia and become a ready resource there. My Green Squadron A-Wing swings in for 3 damage to his base. thorrk's on 2 resources here. I use Sabine's ability. I think he might have passed there. I'm not entirely sure. But I used Sabine's ability for the damage. Bring out the Falcon here. Millennium Falcon, 3 cost 3/4, comes into play readied. You do have to pay a resource or return it to your hand later on. So it has kind of an ongoing cost you have to pay to make up for its huge efficiency early, but that's fine. So thorrk was repeatedly passing there so that when I played Sabine, he'd be ready, and he has a forced choke to kill Sabine. So once I deploy her, she does not last long. But I did manage to get some damage, and the fact that I brought Sabine out as the last action meant that I actually keep the initiative here because my opponent uses that force choke to defeat Sabine, and then with nothing left to do, I take the initiative. If I had played Sabine earlier on in the turn, my opponent could have taken the initiative by using that force choke before I attacked with my units, which I really do want to do because of the way this deck works. So I'm kind of reconsidering my resourcing decision there. I end up going like this so that I can potentially play two cost cards plus the 1 resource that I have to spend to keep the Falcon in play. All right, so I have my opponent down to 16 life, but he's going to be on 6 resources, which means Vader could deploy this turn if we see another ramp card come out. So I'm going to push 3 damage with my A-Wing. The reason I attack with it first is because it's easier to kill, and Interceptor will kill it, but not the Falcon. My opponent does play a resupply, so we're going to have Vader on field this turn. And so I need to push to close out this game. I do 3 damage there with the old um, Falcon. Use Sabine's ability here. This is kind of a stall. I'm hoping that my opponent will do something with Vader before I deploy these other ground units. So I used Sabine's ability there to avoid passing. Passing is kind of risky because it signals that you might have some play you're waiting on, and your opponent could also just take the initiative. So by using Sabine's ability, I give the opportunity to attack back to my opponent without actually doing anything. My opponent attacks and does 5 damage to my base with Vader's attack and 2 damage to the Green Squadron A-Wing using Vader's ability. I'm going to spend 2 resources to play Sabine Wren the unit. My opponent takes the initiative, and then I am going to bring out the Lothal Insurgent as well, forcing a random discard. I think there's a high chance my opponent has an overwhelming barrage here. And I am hopefully going to pick it out of the hand with the Lothal Insurgent's random discard. My opponent was going to set up something where it was like roll a die and 1, 2, 3, or 4 is that number and 5 or 6 you re-roll. But I point out that on TTS it's faster to just make the cards into a pile, shuffle the pile, and then take the top one. And I do manage to snipe an overwhelming barrage here. So Lothal Insurgent paying off there. Happy to see that go. Um, and then I am going to resource up. We're going to go to that next turn. My opponent's on 9 life, and I have a surprise strike here and a lot of units that attack for 3. I opt not to resource, which I think is maybe wrong. I'm not sure. But I can surprise strike here and play Green Squadron A-Wing, which seems pretty reasonable. So it's my opponent's move. He could attack, kill one of my ground units, and kill the A-Wing using Vader's ability. That would be pretty straightforward. Probably kill. He actually can't attack Sabine because Sabine is her weird ability that makes it so that enemies can't attack her if you have enough aspects on the board is actually in effect. But my opponent has a second overwhelming barrage, so the discard there not as value as I thought. So he has 7 total damage. He spends 3 of it on killing the wounded A-Wing and the Lothal Insurgent, and then with 4 more damage, can kill Sabine and put 1 damage on the Falcon, or can just kill the Falcon. Ends up opting to kill the Falcon, so I just have Sabine. I'm going to go for that surprise strike, 6 damage to the base. Now here we actually make a little error. So my opponent erroneously thought this game was over because I think he was reading it upside down. So he has 9 life, but I think he thought he had 6. And I point, wait, you're still alive, 3 HP left. This causes a bit of confusion as we end up, trying to recreate the situation, and we talk to the judge and so on with we end up just recreating the situation. So he'd already shuffled the discard pile back, and we're trying to figure out what all those cards were. There should be 2 overwhelming barrages, and I don't know what all else. We're sort of trying to figure it out and get the right cards in the right places. But I'll just talk about the matchup a bit while that's going on. So the Sabine versus Vader is actually a matchup that I think is pretty favorable for Sabine, and the reason is Vader is just pretty slow. Um, Even with all this ramp stuff, Vader kind of gets started later on in the game, and Sabine can often do a lot of damage before he gets going. Additionally, like actually playing some of the ramp stuff is risky against Sabine. Like if you spend a whole turn just playing resupply, and Sabine meanwhile played another unit or 2 and attacked you with whatever was already on board and used her ability, you end up taking a lot of damage. So it can be pretty negative. And we'll have to see how exactly this goes in the rest of this game and the rest of the set, because this is 2 out of 3s with sideboard. So there is the possibility of sideboarding in stuff that's going to make you better suited to face Sabine in the second round. But I do think that by default Sabine is a pretty annoying opponent for a slower deck to deal with, just because she has so much aggressive power between the small units that can attack aggressively and efficiently early on. Green Squadron A-Wing is great in this role. Sabine Wren, Explosives Artist, is great in this role. That's the unit version of Sabine. And I think that's actually a big problem for Vader and for other slower decks. Even Luke, honestly, even Luke and him with all that blue stuff doesn't really feel like he's fast enough to deal with Sabine very effectively. Exception being double blue Luke actually is really good against Sabine, in my opinion, because Vigilance is a superb card against this kind of early aggro. But more normal Luke decks, I think, can often struggle. Okay, so we've sort of recreated the situation here, I think. So I just surprise strike the base. Base is now at 3. My opponent had played that barrage. Vader has yet to attack. Sabine is now vulnerable. She can be attacked as normal, even though she was uh, safe at the start of the turn. She no longer has friendly units on the board to protect her. I just did my surprise strike, so it is thorrk's turn. thorrk thinking about this next move. It's a tough spot to be on 3 life against Sabine. Ends up spending 3 resources to bring out a cell block guard. Okay. So then I'm going to spend 2 resources to play that A-Wing. Green Squadron A-Wing. And it's important to know this A-Wing can attack for lethal on its own. So this is very unfavorable for my opponent. He actually kind of is in a tough spot here. He has to take the initiative. If he doesn't take the initiative, then I take the initiative and the A-Wing attacks and kills him at the start of the turn. But if he takes the initiative, then I use Sabine's ability. He goes to 2 life, and then unless he can somehow kill me really fast or if he kills both Sabine and the A-Wing with the same action, if he has the 3rd overwhelming barrage, for instance, or if he has an Emperor Palpatine, that could clear out my current board. But even then, he's on desperately low life with Sabine pinging the base for damage. Additionally, Sabine, Explosives Artist, can attack the cell block guard and deal 1 damage to the base with her on attack ability, which would in turn put more pressure on that base. So this is a very unsafe situation for my opponent, and we're going to see how this goes. There are some potential outs, though, some things that can clear both units at the same time. Let's see how this goes. And there we have one of them. 8 resources being spent for Emperor Palpatine, blasting both those units. But here's the problem. I'm looking at my stuff. I just used Sabine's ability. Enemy base now at 1 life. My base at 14 life. My opponent can attack me for 8 damage this turn. I can just take the initiative, use Sabine's ability, and blow up the enemy base with that 1 damage at the start of the next turn. And that's I think what I'm gonna do here. Oh no, maybe I play the Fighters for Freedom because I can then open fire to win the game. No, I actually just take the initiative. Um, so this was technically slightly bad because this tournament had life remaining on base as a tiebreak. So I could have deployed the Fighters for Freedom, and then if he didn't attack and kill the Fighters for Freedom, I could play the open fire to win the game immediately. And if he did attack and kill the Fighters for Freedom, I could take the initiative and then win the game with more life remaining on my base. But not a big deal. Ultimately, still a victory for me, with Sabine Wren able to take down Vader in this first round. So now this is a best 2 out of 3. So we are going to sideboard, and we are going to move on to the second game. And if I can win this second game, then I will, win this match. And if thorrk wins this second game, we'll move on to round 3. So I'm searching through my deck. So what I want to remove here is I want to remove my Starwing Scouts. So Starwing Scout can be a really good card, but it only has 1 HP. And 1 HP units are really vulnerable to Darth Vader's ping. So I'm trying to get these 1 HP Starwing Scouts out of my deck. I do think I have Greedo still in there. I don't really have a good replacement for Greedo, unfortunately, so he's just going to have to maybe get pinged. On the plus side, Greedo can be deployed earlier in the game, where sometimes using that ping can be more awkward for the opponent. I don't think thorrk is running the 1-cost unit, so he can't ping on the first turn. And so if I play Bossk early in the game and he plays out and he gets the ability to ping on turn 2 or 3, perhaps I'll already have attacked by the time he can clear out Bossk. Starwing Scout, on the other hand, is a 3-drop, is a little harder to position in that way. Okay, so I sub out the Starwing Scouts for disabling Fang Fighters, which are kind of a natural replacement, a little bit worse on offense. They do have the ability to discard an upgrade, which can be handy in some situations. And they have 2 HP instead of 1, which means that ping damage isn't going to be as big a deal. Nice substitution if your opponent is playing ISB Agent or Darth Vader. Actually, there were enough Bobas in this game and enough ISB in this tournament, enough ISB agents that I think that the Starwing Scout swap for the disabling Fang Fighter might have just been a good idea for the overall main deck, with the Starwing Scout becoming the sideboard card to bring in against decks that don't have ISB agent or Vader. That said, wasn't sure what the meta was going to be. Probably more Bobas than I was expecting, and fewer of some of the heroic leaders than I was expecting. I think we saw 1 Luke and 0 Han. And I was expecting a few more of those, so we'll have to see how it goes. Okay. So thorrk also doing some sideboarding here, and we're going to see what his changes can bring him for round 2. The other thing is that as I won the first round, thorrk gets to choose first or second for the second round, and I believe chooses first. In general, going first, I think, is considered better in this game, but I think it's not always the case. All right, let's see here. So this opening hand is not horrible. It's not awesome. I have two Waylays, which I don't love. I do have both. I have Sabine as a turn one play, which is really good, and I can then turn two play the Rogue Operative or the Disabling Fangfighter, and that actually seems like a pretty reasonable opening. So I do end up keeping it. Having the Surprise Strike there is also good. Surprise Strike is an awesome card for aggro. It's like a gold card. It's one of the best cards you can have. Is it the best card? I don't know, but it's high up there. It's really, really strong. Okay, so we're gonna lead off with the seasoned short trooper gets played. I play Sabine. My opponent takes the initiative. I'll use Sabine's ability for one damage to each base. I have another rogue operative Greedo surprise strike. So this turn it looks like either what I'm doing is I'm going to be surprise striking the base with Sabine and playing Greedo, or I'm going to be playing one of the three drops, probably the rogue operative. Thorrk force chokes Sabine. I do get to draw a card. Does mean also his ping is available this turn. I use Sabine's ability, one damage to each base. My opponent swings in with the short trooper for two. I'm then going to bring out the rogue operative. 3 cost 2/4 with raid 2 and saboteur. And Thork now could ping me if he wants. Might also just take the initiative, though, quite frankly. It's kind of an interesting situation. You can choose to do either of those options. Ends up taking the initiative rather than going for the ping. That's fine by me. So this is the turn when Sabine can deploy, although she might just get met with a quick force choke like she did in the last game. Thork hits the base for two. I was sort of expecting him to hit the rogue operative there to set up a potential ambushing super laser tech, but that's not what he went for. I'll happily have the rogue operative hit his base for four. You know, I feel like I'm the beatdown here, and I want to be pushing that damage. Um, let's see what happens next here. Yeah, so he does bring out the super laser technician. I think it might have been better to have the shore trooper hit my rogue operative and then ambush the technician for the kill. I use Sabine's ability. He pings the rogue operative. I'm going to deploy Sabine. He takes the initiative. Wing leader giving Sabine two experience. Greedo on the field. Sabine hits the base for five. So if you look at the damage that I have on the board right now, I do actually have lethal onboarding without the surprise strike, since I have 5 from Sabine, 3 from Greedo, 4 from the rogue operative, and then 2 from the wing leader. So you add all that up, and you're going to get to 14, which is more than my opponent's current life of 13. However, he, of course, gets to interfere with that. We could see an overwhelming barrage this turn. We could potentially see Vader deploying this turn if he attacks and loses his super laser technician, which is very easy to do, and then either ambushes a second super laser technician or plays a resupply. So there's definitely some things my opponent could be doing here that would be potentially nasty. All right, so we see the super laser technician trades with Greedo. Greedo misses his when defeated reveal there. Um, so we're gonna have just the seasoned short trooper left on the field against wing leader, rogue operative, and Sabine. I actually decided to shoot first with the rogue operative to take down the short trooper. And the reason that I did that is that my opponent is now on 6 resources, and I want to make sure he can't barrage me at strength 6. So I take down that unit there in order to preclude that option. Barrage unit strength 6 would allow him to defeat both my rogue operative and my wing leader and put some damage on Sabine and would really slow me down. So I'm going to slow down a little bit to pick up that kill and hopefully be in a better position to proceed. My opponent does bring out an interceptor, taking down the wing leader. I'm going to surprise strike the base with Sabine for 8 damage. Only 5 life left on the base, so another attack from Sabine will close out the game. thorrk sort of has to take the initiative here, play something that's going to shut down Sabine immediately, because otherwise I just take the initiative and win the game at the start of the next turn with a big attack from Sabine. And it would be pretty hard to stop me at this point also, because even if he plays a Sentinel, the Rogue Operative can attack past a Sentinel into the base, and Sabine could then attack into the Sentinel, and her on-attack ability would defeat the base. So, tough position to be in for my opponent here. Mulling over some options, maybe. This is sort of where you want to be as the aggro player, before your opponent even has their leader out, you want them to be close to losing the game if they have one of these later game leaders. It's especially true with Chewie, who becomes a huge obstacle for aggro, at least in the ground arena. And we actually do have some. I was in the same group with the one Chewie player in the event, so we will actually have some Chewie games. I believe that's going to be tomorrow's gameplay video. We'll have my match against a Command Chewie in this same tournament, and that was an interesting match. So thorrk ends up just taking the initiative here, so I play a Lothal Insurgent. That's going to be another random discard. And it's also just going to be another body on the field to make the situation more difficult for my opponent in shutting down my board. Random discard ends up taking Agent Callus. I'm, happy to see him go, though he's not super relevant at this time. My opponent accidentally reveals the remaining hands with cards when putting them back, showing that there is an overwhelming barrage there, um, which might be solid for me to have removed. We'll have to see. The other thing about removing that trooper is that once he played the overwhelming barrage, the trooper with the bonus stats would still be active. So he could have used the barrage to kill my units and then use the trooper's attack to kill Sabine. So my opponent can basically just concedes the game here. But I point out that he should attack my base with the interceptor first to deal 3 damage to me so that he'll have a more favorable tiebreaker. And so he does that, and then I'm going to attack with Sabine and close out the game. So that's going to be a 2-0 victory for Cunning Sabine over Command Vader. And this matchup, I think, is pretty Sabine favored. The Vader just deploys too slowly and takes too much time kind of setting up, and it's difficult to oppose the aggressive push. The one card that is really good in the early game is like an anti-aggro, is the Forced Choke, which can be quite nasty. You can defeat Sabine in one shot with it. That's quite relevant. But the problem is it also gives a card, which is not the greatest thing to have. You don't really want to give a deck full of cheap aggro stuff a card, so it's kind of more of an obstacle than it might be in some situations. Um, Ultimately, Sabine was able to push the damage through and get the win. But yeah, that's how it went for this round. However, thorrk ultimately was able to come back from this defeat and actually go all the way to the finals and indeed win the tournament. So congratulations to thorrk for the big win. We didn't end up playing one another again, but thorrk was successful in the other games in this group and then went on to win out in elims and take the event. So big shout out to thorrk. While the Command Vader deck, I think, struggled against Sabine here, it was really a problem. It proved to be pretty well suited to playing some of the command bobas that were very prevalent in this event. And I know thorrk beat, I think, at least three or four of those in his path to victory. So congratulations to thorrk for the ultimate victory in the event, despite this setback. Always tough to lose in the first game of a tournament, but thorrk was able to rally from that defeat and go on to win. And then also I want to do a big shout out to Rishca who hosted this event. Yeah, thank you, Rishca. This event was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed playing in it, and I think it's looking good for the future of the game when there's events like this going on already. I recorded a quick video, just like a little bit less than 10 minutes, that has more of my thoughts on the tournament itself. If you guys want to check that out, I'm going to link to it in the video description below. But aside from that, that's gonna, I think, just about do it for this one. Thanks to you guys for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.